Hello, and welcome to Enlightened Empaths, your community for the spiritually awakened. Today, we are so grateful and excited to welcome Kute Blackson. Kute is a beloved inspirational speaker and transformational teacher. He's the author of the national best-selling book, You Are the One, and The Magic of Surrender. He's widely considered the next generation leader in the field of personal development and has been featured on Larry King Now, Fox and Friends, Dr. Drew, as well. Inc. magazine called him the mindfulness guru billionaires go to for advice. Kute Blackson offers a fresh, bold look at spiritual awareness for a whole new generation. Born in Ghana, West Africa, Kute's multicultural upbringing as a child of a Japanese mother and a Ghanaian father has spanned 4 different continents. His unique lineage laid the foundation for his approach to breaking down barriers and unlocking an individual's true gifts and greatness. For over 20 years, Kute Blackson has been inspiring audiences around the world. From the first time he spoke in front of 3,000 people at age 8, to helping organizations develop authentic leadership and achieve extraordinary performance over the last decade. His electrifying presentations not only offer real-world practical ideas and soul-stirring wisdom, but also ignite the heart and inspire courageous action. He recently received the 2019 Walden Award in the New Thought Wisdom category that Unity Organization honors once a year to recognize socially conscious leaders who are making the world a better place. One of the previous year's winners in the same category was Oprah Winfrey. His mission is simple: to awaken and inspire people across the planet to access inner freedom, live authentically, and fulfill their true life's purpose. Thank you so very much for coming on the show with us today, Kute.
Thanks for having me.
Your new book, The Magic of Surrender, feels so needed and welcoming for where the world is right now. Could you maybe give us a little bit on why you chose to write this book?
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually didn't choose to write this book. This was not the book that I thought I was going to write. In all honesty, I had all of these ideas of the book I wanted to write, the book I intended to write. And I remember one day sitting in a room with an entire whiteboard the size of a wall, brainstorming hundreds of ideas and topics and themes and titles that I thought I was going to write about, and that I thought would sell, and that I thought publishers would buy, and that I thought the audience and the public would want, and that would be bestsellers. And after a few days of doing that, I remember looking at all of the different topics and titles and themes on this whiteboard, and it was literally as though the soul, the essence, the energy of this book literally just dropped into my heart. And, it was a feeling more than anything that was so undeniable that at first I was resisting it because this was not the book I wanted to write. And I think that's kind of how it is in life sometimes. Sometimes there's an idea of the life that we think we should be living and who we think we should be and what we think we should be doing. And yet there's something else that's seeking to happen. And so when I finally surrendered to the book that was seeking to be written, I felt as though it had an energy of its own, a vibration of its own, a frequency of its own, a destiny of its own. And part of my job was to surrender to it, to align with it, to say yes to it, and allow the book to be written through me. And that's really, really what I did. It's like I got on the train of this book, and I feel that I was more of a vessel for the book to be written through rather than the writer or the author of this book. And once I really surrendered, I would say everything started to come together: the agent, the publisher, the ideas, the concept, the structure, and it started to flow in a very beautiful way. And I think that's one of the keys of surrender. So the book about surrender took me through my own process of surrender and revealed itself, but the essence, or perhaps an initial impulse for the book was because my mother, at the end of 2016, she was diagnosed with stomach cancer. And it was totally unexpected. She seemed to be healthy. I was traveling, promoting my first book, going all around the world, You Are the One. My first book was a national bestseller. And so all of a sudden, I remember getting a phone call from my father saying, your mother has stomach cancer, total shock. I was living in Los Angeles at the time. I began to fly back and forth from LA to London, where my mother was based, every month. And I would be there every 3 or 4 weeks to be with my mother during her chemo sessions. And I was taking care of her and looking after her. And I had every intention to get her better, to make her well, to heal her, so to speak. And I would say pretty soon into the process, I realized that nothing I do, no amount of prayer, no amount of meditation, no amount of spiritual principles or practice, no amount of yoga, no amount of green juice, no amount of herbal supplements were really going to make a difference in her living or not, that she was going to indeed die. And I realized in that moment that I wasn't in control. And that was a profound moment of surrender, of letting go, of surrendering her, and letting go of control that I really didn't have. And that led to a deep grieving process. But it also opened up, in that non-resistance, it also opened up the reality that my mother was dying, and that I wouldn't have her for very much longer. The woman I loved the most, the person I loved the most on the planet, would be no more. And so that broke my heart open to being even more present. That broke my heart open to being even more with her. That broke my heart open to loving every single second with her even more fully, and turned out to be the best year of my life. And I would say the seed of the book was initially planted by the universe, because in the middle of that year, about 5-6 months into that year, the doctors officially told us that they told my mother that she didn't have very long to live, that there's nothing else that they could have done for her, that literally she would have days, weeks, or months to live. And I remember hearing the news one day at the hospital and feeling such a deep sense of sorrow and grief of the reality of what I knew in my heart. And I looked at my mother in the car on the way home, and I asked her, "Are you afraid of dying?" And she looked at me and she said, "No, I'm not. I'm not afraid of dying. I know that I'm not this body. This body is temporary. This body is simply a vehicle for my soul. And even when I'm gone, I'm not really dead, because what I am will live forever, and I'll be with you from the other side, guiding you." And then I looked at her, wanting to be a good son. And I said to her, "Is there anything that I can do for you to support you the next few days, weeks, or months? What do you want? What do you need? What can I do for you? Where can I take you? What do you want?" And this is, I think, when the seed of the book was also planted, because she looked at me in a very spiritual way and she said, "There's nothing I want. All I want is what God wants for my life." And it was such a simple statement, but I realized in that moment the key to her freedom was she was surrendered. She wasn't attached to living. She wasn't attached to dying. She was simply open to the highest good. She was open to whatever was in store for her and her soul, and the destiny and journey for her soul's growth and evolution. And the entire year leading up to that, she had been in complete peace, an emotional woman. She would cry a lot, but she didn't cry once. She was in total peace. And I realized that this was the key to her freedom. And when I reflected on her life, I saw that this is a woman who had been living surrender her entire life right in front of me, day in, day out, in simple ways. And this was a woman, a Japanese woman. My mother's Japanese. She married an African guy, hadn't seen him, hadn't laid eyes on him, hadn't spoken to him, never left the country, couldn't speak English, agreed to marry this man, my father, from Africa, sight unseen, having no idea who he really was, just feeling a calling in her soul. And so I saw that surrender was the key to her freedom. And once she passed away, I really meditated and reflected. And when I had that epiphany, I started to see that all of the great ones, whether it was Jesus, whether it was Buddha, whether it's Mother Teresa, whether it was Gandhi, whether it's Bob Marley, whether it's Muhammad Ali, whether it's Bruce Lee, they all at some moment had to surrender to something bigger than themselves. They all in some moment had to let go and surrender to the deeper impulse of life that was seeking to express through them. And in that surrender, life was able to use them. In that surrender, life was able to move through them and move mountains through them and express through them and perform miracles through them. And I think that's really the magic of surrender. And that's really why I wrote the book.
And what a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful experience to share with your mother.
Mm,
I mean, truly, what a gift. And I believe that we contract to be with the people and learn the life lessons that we come here to experience. And a lot of our listeners have had very tumultuous situations in their lives. And I think one of my affirmations that I write every morning is, please let me allow rather than trying to control, because I think that's along those same lines as surrender. You have to get out of the way in order to open up to the infinite scenarios and opportunities that the universe wants to provide for us.
yeah, yeah. And that's what surrender is, you know. I mean, I think a lot of people think that surrender is weak or surrender is passive. I think there's been this misconception of surrender, you know, that if you surrender, you won't get your dreams, goals, desires, you won't manifest what you truly want. If you surrender, you'll be taken advantage of. If you surrender, you're going to be a doormat. If you surrender, that means being lazy. Or if you surrender, that means you have to be broke or homeless or sell everything and move to the Himalayas. And so there's this notion of surrender as being something that's not really inspiring or positive. And if you surrender, you're going to get less than what you expected, less than what you want. You're going to have to settle in some way. And really, what I'm inviting is a new paradigm that by surrendering, what if you actually got more? More than you could imagine with your conscious mind, more than you could intend with your ego, with your personality, more joy, more love, more abundance, more prosperity, more purpose, a bigger life than you could even imagine in this moment. And so to me, that's the invitation of surrender. That's the possibility of surrender. To surrender simply, just so that we're clear at the beginning of this conversation, to surrender is not a passive thing. It's actually an active thing. To surrender is to let go of control, the illusion of control, at least as human beings. I think in so many ways, we're constantly trying to control everything. This is one of the roots of suffering. I think control is a master addiction. We try to control our thoughts in meditation. We try to control God, even in our prayers. We try to control our spouses. We try to control our children. We try to control our bodies in exercise. We try to control how we're perceived by others by acting a certain way. We try to control, you know, we try to control so many things that we're not in control of. We try to control our pets, you know, and I think if we really look at our lives, how often has control and force really brought us freedom and joy and bliss and fulfillment and satisfaction? At the end of the day, I think it tends to lead to more stress and anxiety and burnout. And so to truly surrender is to let go of trying to control every single thing. To truly surrender is to let go of trying to fit life into a small box, fit life into some idea, some limited concept of what we think it should be based on our ego, identity, conditioned mind. To surrender is to let go of the idea of who we think we should be and the life we think we should have, so we can allow the true expression, the true essence, the true energy, the true authentic impulse of life to move through us and express through us. And as you said, then we can be truly, truly, truly open to infinite possibilities. And I think many times we get, as human beings, attached to an idea of what we think we want. And we set goals and we set great dreams and we set intentions and we set desires. I mean, so many books today teach us you have to know what you want. You've got to be specific about your goals and know exactly what you want in order to manifest it. And you've just willpower and force and intention and manifestation. The challenge is, I think many times we get what we thought we wanted and then we realize, well, is this it? We're left dissatisfied. And so I think sometimes we, as human beings, what we thought we wanted is not what we really wanted. It was just what we thought we wanted based on who we thought we were. And many times our goals and our dreams are actually projections from the past. You know, maybe in our childhood, we weren't loved by our parents. We weren't loved in the way we wanted to be loved. And so we made up a story about ourselves as not being enough, not being lovable, not being acceptable, not being okay. And so there's a kind of an unconscious projection through our intentions and goals and manifestation process of, if I can just get that body, or if I can just make that $1 million, or if I can just get that thing, then that will compensate for what I wasn't. And so I think goal setting that way never really leads to deep happiness and fulfillment and true authentic living. And it's coming from an ego-based model, an ego-based way of doing things where we're focused on the I. What do I want? And so in terms of surrendering and what it's like to live surrender is a different question. I think is different, a new paradigm, a different question, a different invitation. So I'm really just inviting people to shift the question. I kind of coined a term, moving beyond goal setting to soul setting. And really, really what that means is to really feel, rather than saying, what do I want? And projecting onto life what you think you want, because often what we think we want is based on the mind which is conditioned and programmed. So it's limited in its ability to perceive what we really want, because we're not in touch with who we really are. And so soul setting is really when you ask a different question. What is it that the universe wants to express through me? What is it that God, life, the divine, infinite, the innate intelligence, my soul is seeking to express through me? And to actually open your heart and your mind without preconceived idea, notion, projection, to feel, to be still, to listen, and feel the deepest impulse of what's seeking to happen, to feel the deepest impulse of what's seeking to express, and then attune to that. Be empathic, feel that, listen to that, feel that, sense that, and then align your thoughts and thinking and actions and marketing and strategy around the deepest, most authentic impulse of what life is seeking to express through you. And I think when we truly soul set in that way, we allow our souls to lead, we allow life to lead us, then we're not limited by the small conditioned identity. Then I think we can truly live and expand into and manifest an unlimited life, because it's no longer I as a small I that is seeking to do it and manifest. It is life itself that is expressing through us. It's life itself that is manifesting through us. It's life itself that is doing through us. And I think that's when magic and miracles happen. And so, I'm simply saying what life can do through you when we get ourselves out of the way is more than anything you can do on your own. And so that's the power of surrender. I think surrender is actually the password to freedom and the most powerful thing that you can do. Look at what life did through Gandhi and Mandela and Mother Teresa. They moved the world.
That is absolutely stunning. I mean, it's a wonderful, wonderful explanation. And what really resonated with me is that with the work that I do, I truly believe that we're all tapping into that collective, and we are given hints and that the spirit will put out the stepping stones for us if we get out of the way and allow that to happen. But as you were speaking, I was thinking, how can we help people trust and find that inner truth so that they can get out of the way and surrender? Because I think from either, as you mentioned, conditioning or cultural expectations or familial expectations, so many people may keep themselves small rather than saying, how can I get out of the way and allow all of this wonderment to come into my life?
Sure. There's a couple of directions I want to go in terms of how can I trust more, but let's start with, kind of how can I begin getting out of the way and surrendering. I think one simple place to begin, one practical place to begin is for everyone to look at, one of the things that I think stop us from truly, shall we say, surrendering and letting go and living authentically and fulfilled are all the ways we lie to ourselves. I think as human beings, in many ways, we lie to ourselves, maybe not even intentionally. It might even be unconscious. We might even not know that we're lying to ourselves, that we're in denial. But I think when we're lying to ourselves about who we are, about what we want, about what we feel, about what our deepest truth is, we keep ourselves stuck and we hold on to the old patterns, old ways of being, old identities, old relationships, things that don't no longer work, things that are no longer in alignment. And so one of the places that I think people can start is really look at, where am I lying to myself? What lies am I telling myself? Maybe you're in a relationship that deep down in your heart is not the one for you. Maybe you're in a relationship that you know is not aligned and your heart doesn't feel alive. You know this is not the person you're meant to be with, but you're compromising, you're settling, maybe afraid that you won't find love. Maybe you're afraid of what people will think. Maybe you're guilty that you're going to hurt someone. But deep in your heart, you know this is not it, but you stay out of comfort, out of familiarity, lying to yourself. Oh, maybe it could be, possibly, or maybe you're working a job for years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 18 years, 8 years, and you know that there is more that you are here to do, that there is more that you have been put on this planet to give, to express, to live, to love, to purpose, but you've been settling out of fear, out of survival, out of familiarity. And so I think how we can begin a process of surrendering and trusting is to begin just by acknowledging the truth and what that might look like. And, I don't want people to think, oh, surrender means you just sell everything and move to, the India, or you have to just break everything apart overnight. It might not look anything like what you think. But I think to truly surrender and begin moving in the direction of authenticity and soulfulness and trust is to say, okay, can I begin telling the truth to myself about what I feel? Take all the pressure off about taking any action, about consequences, because sometimes we don't tell ourselves the truth because we're afraid of the consequences of what that might mean. I'm afraid that I'll be alone. I'm afraid that this is going to be the end of this relationship. But I think if we can just begin by acknowledging our truth, it might sound like, okay, I'm in this relationship and I know it's not right. I'm not going to lie to myself. I'm not going to rationalize. I know that it's not right. And let me just be with that truth. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to take action. But let me just sit with that truth and feel what that feels like, because that feeling begins to stir a process inside of one's heart that can then lead to another step. Just to give yourself permission to be with the truth of what you feel and sit with that process and see what happens. Maybe you're not. We talked about maybe someone's not in a career or living their purpose, and they're working a job that they hate. It might just look like saying, you know what, this is not what I'm here to do. It's painful. I actually hate my job. Feel that. Be with that. Let's tell the truth about that. And so, a couple of simple questions to begin. What lies am I telling myself? Number two, what am I pretending to not know? Many ways we play a game. Ego plays a game of confusion to keep itself safe. Because if I'm confused, I don't have to take action. So the game is I'm confused. I don't know. I'm not sure. When in so many ways, deep down, we know. Deep down, there is a part of us that has a sense. There's a part of us that has a subtle feeling sometimes. There's a part of us that kind of can feel a frequency and energy, a sensation like, something's off about this relationship. Something's off about this business deal. Something's off. It's that subtle, fine feeling that we often don't acknowledge because we're afraid. For instance, I sometimes kind of give this analogy. If you look back on your past relationships, maybe 10 years ago, someone you really loved, and you went back and forth. Is this the one? Is this not the one? Is this the one? Is this not the one? And went back and forth, and turmoil, internal turmoil. And maybe that went on for a period of time. If you really look back, the moment you broke up, so many of us, we tell our friends, I knew that was not going to work. I knew it. There's a part of us that knows everything, because at the deepest level, we are everything. But I think it requires the willingness to want the truth more than we want what we want. And when we're more committed to the truth more than anything, that's what begins to set us free. And to create the time to be still, to remove distractions and feel. So the third question I would really invite people to sit with so that they can bring themselves more into alignment is, what are the lies? What are the non-truths costing me? What is it costing me? In terms of, it's painful to not be in alignment. It's painful to not surrender. It's painful to live inauthentically. It's painful to betray oneself. It's painful. It should be painful. The pain that we feel from not living in our hearts, not surrendering, not living our authentic truth, the pain that we feel is real. I believe it's a gift. I believe it's feedback. It's our friend. It's trying to show us in many ways where we're not living true. But what we tend to do, rather than acknowledge it, rather than sit with it, rather than be with it, rather than surrender to, okay, something, this feeling of pain is trying to tell me something, we judge it, we distract ourselves, we disconnect from it, we numb it through alcohol, through eating, we sex it away, we eat it away, we drink it away, we social media it away, we party it away, we travel it away, we Netflix it away, whatever we can do to not be present to that feeling, to that sensation, the feeling in our hearts that we're not in alignment. And so create the space in your life and the time to be with the feeling by removing distractions and to honor that feeling and sit with, what is this feeling trying to tell me? How is this feeling guiding me in more of a direction towards living my truth? And so I think that's somewhere where we can start. But in terms of trust, how do you trust more? How do we trust more? How do we trust more? How do we surrender more? Someone asked me a similar question of, how do you trust the universe? How do we trust? And I thought of the question, and I sat with it for a second, and then I laughed. I looked at them and I said, how can you not trust? How can you, right? How can you not trust? All of life, every single moment of our lives, okay, granted, life isn't perfect, but it's pretty damn amazing. Every single moment of your life is proof of the universe, trustability of the universe loving you. You and I were sitting here, those listening, you're sitting here, and you've been breathing during this conversation. Breath is happening. You and I, we're not sitting here forcing our breath, doing some special super duper technique to force our breathing. It's just happening in spite of us, every single moment of our life. Something is breathing us. We are being breathed by an intelligence. What is that intelligence? And so I think it's so important that we tune in and connect with our body sensation and awareness, and really connect, get intimate, even with our biology, with our physiology. It's like we're being breathed by something. What is it that is breathing me? Let's meditate on that. Let's sit with that. Let's become intimate with the breath that is happening. It's happening. There are trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of cells in your body. There are trillions of processes happening, digestion happening, liver, heart, colon, intestines, brain, ear. So many processes happening that's just, wait a second, is this not proof that there is something we can trust? The same intelligence that's functioning you and me and everyone listening is the same intelligence that is functioning 8 billion people, 7.8 billion people in humanity, and then all of the species and the fish and the animals and the nature. And look at the sun. Let's just spend time. I would say if you really want to deepen your relationship in terms of trust, spend time observing nature. Be in nature, feel nature, breathe in nature, observe nature and the seasons. I ask people, was there ever a day when you woke up and maybe at 11 a.m., 12 a.m., it was pitch black? We say, well, what happened? The sun just forgot to come out today. I've never had a day, when the sun forgot to come out. There is some kind of, order, some kind of intelligence. And so I'm just saying that the same intelligence that's functioning me and you and all of existence, nature, and you and I as human beings, we are a part of nature. We have just disconnected and been conditioned out of and forgotten that we are a part of nature. We're a part of this natural unfolding. And so what is living all of existence is also the same intelligence that's living us. If we cut your finger, there's an innate intelligence that knows how to heal and bring your body back into harmony. It knows. Yeah, somehow as human beings, it's kind of funny, we trust, like on your phone, on your smartphone, we trust Siri, the great Siri, more than we trust our soul. I mean, how is that we trust Siri? Hey Siri, can you tell me? Hey Siri, how do I get to this location? Siri says turn left, we turn left. Siri says turn right, we turn right. We don't quite. I've never seen anyone argue with Siri. Siri, are you sure about that? Let's have a conversation. Never. But the moment our soul says, hey, you know what? There's a great purpose for you that in terms of why you were born. You're meant to move people. You're meant to write this book. You're meant to do this project. You're meant to launch that business. You're meant to impact people. We start questioning. Wait a second. Are you sure? Who do you think? Who do I think I am? Wait. We start questioning our soul. And so I think we need to just trust, tune into our body, be in nature, observe nature. And I think one thing also in terms of surrender is sometimes your soul's guidance doesn't come in some big, loud siren. This is also a mistake that people have. Like it's going to be this big, loud bell come crashing down. Sometimes this inner guidance that we're called to trust, I'm asking people to trust, can be such a subtle sensation, a very subtle feeling, almost imperceptible to the conscious mind. It might be a warmth in the body. It might be a very gentle pull to explore that relationship, a very gentle pull to go in that direction. And so I'm inviting people is stop questioning that sensation and that pull, because that deeper sensation that arises, there's not just emotion. Emotion can be conditioned from one's identity and unresolved pain, hurt, trauma, childhood. But that deeper feeling sense that arises from the depth of one's being is like an unconditioned energetic frequency that is moving from the depth of your being, that's not conditioned through the mind or the lens of the ego. Feel into that. It often doesn't make sense to your mind. And so all I invite people to do is when you feel that sensation, turn left, turn right, go here, move there. Just lean in. Go in the direction. So one of the things that's important or that would help to, shall we say, give up or let go is the constant need to know everything. The mind, this is one of the mind's devices, the ego's devices to try to have some kind of control. Got to know, what does this mean? Turn left, why? Go here, why? What this relationship, where's it going? What does it mean? What's going to happen? So we end up feeling this subtle impulse, and then we start questioning the hell out of it. Why? And why not? And what might happen? I'm saying, start observing the sensation, the pull, the energy. If you really become sensitive, life has a flow, like a wave. Life has a flow, like, oh, it's moving in this way. So you don't have to know where you're going to get to exactly where you need to be. But when you feel that pull in the direction, give up the need to understand it, give up the need to know it, and just go in that direction. You will be led. You're allowing. See, surrender is to allow life to lead you rather than you trying to impose and lead life. This intelligence of life has been around a lot longer than you and I. It's been around for billions, eternity. And so lean in. Give up the need to know. I think the degree to which we can begin to embrace the unknown is the degree to which we're free. The degree to which we can embrace the unknown and dance in the unknown. It determines how free we can be. See, the mind's capacity to know what something means, because the mind is always trying to make meaning of something. The mind's capacity to know what something means, even when we think we're like, oh, I finally figured it out. The mind's capacity is actually very limited. And our ability to understand something or figure out a situation or a dynamic is often only as clear or as good as the level of our consciousness, which is determined by our conditioning from past programming. So many times what we think, the meanings that we make up about what something is, and then align our actions accordingly, the meanings that we make up about what something is, many times is not really what it means. It's not really what it is. We just are interpreting it that way from our limited perspective because the ego mind identity is not able to see everything. And so when we live in the mind trying to figure everything out, we end unconsciously we end up limiting ourselves because our interpretation of what something is limiting. How many times was something a certain way, but it wasn't? How many times did something that you really thought you wanted and you were sure about turn out not to be? And maybe it turned out to be better. I would even say, how many times did for instance, if let's say if you look back on your relationships, didn't work out maybe, but you were really in love, you really wanted to marry that person, you thought it was, you made a judgment that this is the one, and it turned out not to be. But now you look back 10, 20, 30, 40, however many years later, and you think from a different perspective. You think to yourself, thank God that didn't work out. Thank God. And so I think when we can live in surrender, we stop attaching and projecting meaning onto a moment. Then we can be open. Then we can be truly available to what the moment is seeking to reveal to us. That doesn't mean you sit there and do nothing, just to be clear. It means you feel the deepest truth. You follow the wave, you follow the flow of life, you follow the energy of life, and you go in that direction and you give 100% of your commitment and of yourself and of your effort to that. 100%, no regrets, but you let go of the attachment. You give up the attachment. You move beyond the attachment, because then when you don't get attached, then you're open to the revelation. You're open to life showing you, because maybe what you thought it was going to be is not that. Sometimes the goal that you think is the goal is not the goal. Sometimes the goal that you think is the goal is just a necessary part of your evolutionary unfolding of your soul, of your soul's destiny to prepare you to do what you're here to do. And so when we're truly surrendered, we live in the openness and the humility, and we live in curiosity. Curiosity is a key quality, because when you're curious, you're not sure, like, this is what it is. Now there's a limitation. It can be nothing else. And then we're trying to force something. When you're living in curiosity, it's like, I'm open. What else could this be? What else could life be showing me? Now we're truly available. Life, show me. Show me what is. Show me what can be. Show me what's seeking to happen now.
I agree with you 100%, because so often it seems it may be pain, it may be inspiration, it may be an inner knowing and calling that is that catalyst for change, to allow us to surrender and to open up to something more. And I think from a personal level, when you do get to that place of surrender, it allows you to truly, truly, truly be present and find joy in the simplicity, and to embrace the fragility of life and say, wow, this is what I have here and now. And when you mentioned the connection with nature, I personally think that is a huge thing for all of us. It balances it out, and it helps us feel more connected with that unity that we're all trying to work towards. So what would be some other benefits from this true surrender?
Benefits. Wow. I mean, here's the thing. True. Let me be clear. Okay. There is fake surrender and true surrender. just so it's clear. Because people might say, oh, surrender, magic of surrender. What is he saying? If you want the magic, you've got to surrender. Oh, ego can attach to that and say, now I have my new manifestation formula. Surrender, surrender, surrender will get me more, which is essentially what I'm saying. When you surrender, you get more. You get more than you can imagine, because you're no longer limited to your own personal ego identity. Yes, I am saying that. You see, fake surrender is this. You start surrendering with agenda. You surrender with, shall we say, intention. You surrender with attachment. You surrender with ego. You surrender with an agenda of a specific outcome that you're attached to having when you surrender. If I let this person go, they're going to come back to me. And so surrender becomes a formula, a strategy, a system, which is also limited, because all formulas, systems, strategies are rooted in the past. And so that is not true surrender. That's fake surrender. I'm going to surrender so that XYZ can happen. Limited, still in the realm of limitation. In real surrender, you feel the deep, authentic, undeniable sense that it's time to let go. You feel the undeniable, authentic feeling, it's time to release and let something go. See, at some moment of our life, if you're on the spiritual path, if you're evolving and you're growing, the life that you've created will become too small for what your soul is seeking to become. It will happen. It must happen. That is not a bad sign. That is a beautiful sign. That is a sign of your growth. That is a sign that you're evolving. That is a sign is that you're not the same as before. That's a sign that you're ready to graduate to your next level. And so the next level of your life will require the next level of you, which will require that you let go of what is no longer aligned. But what most of us do in that moment is we hold on to the past, we hold on to the relationship, we hold on to what we know, we hold on to the identity, we hold on to who we've been out of comfort, out of safety, out of familiarity, at the ego's way of reinforcing its existence and identity, which just keeps us stuck. Holding on to that which is no longer aligned is our affirmation of our lack of trust in the universe, and as a result, we'll manifest more of that. So truly letting go of what's not aligned clears the space. Truly surrendering and letting go of what's no longer a vibrational match in terms of relationships and people and such clears the space, clears our consciousness, which then allows our vibrational frequency to rise to a higher level. And in life, you don't just get what you want, you get what you are, the level of consciousness with which you're vibrating at. And so you become a vibrational match to higher frequency situations and people. And so when you really clear the space, you're truly available energetically, mentally, emotionally for the more. Many times we hold on to the old, and we meditate and we affirm and we pray for the more. We hold on to an old relationship. We say, well, God, please send me my soulmate. But we don't want to let go of this person until the other person shows up. But that's not how it works. If you want the magic, you have to surrender. And surrender is that password to freedom. And so real surrender, authentic surrender. In authentic surrender, likely you won't know or be able to predict what will be on the other side. You won't, let me repeat, you won't really know what will be on the other side. And when you truly let go in that domain, in true surrender, because you're not projecting what's going to be, you're not intending what's going to be, then you move into a space of no limitations. Because what can happen on the other side is no longer limited to your mind's visualization and your mind's projection. Now you are in that space of infinite possibilities where life and the grace and the magic and the infinite intelligence of life can perform and manifest through you. True surrender is when you don't know. But in that not knowing, something knows. In that not knowing, you align with the force of nature, with the forces of nature, and all the forces of nature begin to support you in ways that you can't imagine. And that's when you're in the miracle zone. That's when things start happening and you start moving in the direction of what feels true. You start moving in the direction of what feels authentic. Go here, go there, turn left, turn right. You don't really know why necessarily, and you don't know how it's going to turn out. There's no guarantee. Mind always looking for a guarantee. Ego always looking for some guarantee, but there really is none. Even when you think there is one, there's no guarantee, but now you're available. And that's often when on your path, people show up, support happens, things happen that you couldn't have planned. Life rises to meet you because you are in the flow. And life, because you are open to life and you're living one with life and in tune with life, life begins to fulfill itself and manifest itself through, in, and as you. And you can sit and you can observe and witness life manifesting itself through you and in your life, and be a witness to that happening as you live and act in the process of life. Then you start realizing a whole nother level, a whole nother sort of, I wasn't going to talk about this, but a whole nother dimension of surrender at a higher level when you start realizing that you are not the doer. And that is a very powerful place to be, where you are not the doer. Ego wants to be in control. Ego wants to be the doer because that's the way ego and our sense of identity reinforces itself, doing, being the one, doing more, being in control. But when you let go of control, it's a little scary for the ego, because then it's a sense of, well, how do I exist if I'm not the one doing it? But when we realize and we let go and we truly surrender, align with life, life flows through us, life moves through us, then we're able to tap into our true potential as a being, our true potential that is life, that is infinite, that is beyond identity. And that's the zone of miracles. That's the zone of magic. And so what might happen? Who knows? But what I will promise, it will be beyond what you can imagine. And when you realize that you're not the doer and it's life that does it through you, you tap into a whole nother level of power, because now you're not limited to personal power. You're not limited to ego power or personal power. This is soul power. This is the type of power that Mandela accessed. This is the type of power that Jesus accessed. If you look at Jesus, that's just a non-religious example. I'm using a religious person, but it's not in a religious context. Here was a miracle worker feeding the 5,000. Here was a miracle worker raising the dead. Here was we all know about Jesus' miracles, feeding the 5,000, on and on and on and on and on, walking in water, but never once. And this was a code to Jesus, I think, and miracles. Never once did Jesus say, hey, folks, look at me. Look how great I am. I'm the great Jesus. Look at these amazing miracles I am doing. Here was his secret. What he said was, it's not I, limited I, small I. It's not I that does the work. It's the Father that does the work through me. There's the code. There's the surrender. And in that surrender, life was able to move through Jesus and miracles were done because he was not in the way. And so when we realize that and we surrender, then life flows through us. We realize it's not us that's doing it. Life uses us. Life is able to use us because we are not putting brakes in the way, putting ourselves in the way. What's possible? It's beyond. And so whether it's Jesus in Jesus' terms, it's the Father. Well, whether it's the father, whether it's the mother, whether it's the great goddess, whether it's the grandmothers, whether it's ancestors, whether it's the universe, whether it's your soul, whatever label you want to put, you'll be used. And for me, the invitation of surrender is to live in a way where you are used by life. That's when we tap into real greatness.
You know, we can circle back to how we started this conversation with the story of your mom. And if you hadn't embraced the surrender, you never would have experienced the best year of your life and seen that light and that honor you could have with your mother's passing. That never would have been able to, you would have lost that opportunity. So I think a huge part in this surrender and everything that you're talking about is we always have that choice, but it is a process in it. You may be at the beginning stages and think, how can I take that first step? But as you continue to grow and evolve with this work and strengthen your own inner connection and honor that you're that unique soul light connected to all that is, then it allows the magic to come in.
Yeah. I mean, I remember being in that year with my mother, and obviously I didn't want her to die. But I remember when I would hold her hands in chemo sessions, and we'd sit in chemo for 9 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours at a time, and had such an amazing time talking and being together. And I thought to myself, wow, why did I wait till she was dying to spend time with her like this? I can't remember the last time I had spent 8 hours, 9 hours straight stretch of time just being with her. This is truly the best year of my life. And I remember when I truly surrendered, I was able to come to a place of thanking. Sounds strange, but thanking cancer. I was like, thank you, cancer, for giving me this experience. Thank you, cancer, for gifting me this depth of intimacy with my mother. And so in many ways, as we surrender, we become maybe more able to thank all of the challenges, all of the difficulties, all of the X's, all of the hardships that happen to us, because they They prepare us and they make us more of who we really are. Even through my mother's passing, I remember when she passed, I was feeling her soul, and I felt her soul tell me, Kute, because I was never incredibly close to my father. And, I had forgiven him for some things, but I didn't have the closeness. I understood one of the reasons she died earlier than him, even though she was 10 years younger. And I felt her soul telling me the reason I died earlier, one of the reasons, was to gift you a deeper relationship with your father, because now it's just you and him. And so
Wow.
that was a whole nother blessing. It's like, wow, if my mother was alive, and gosh, I would love for her to have been alive, but if she was alive, my father and I would not have gone through the journey of healing and loving and heart opening, like the depth of love I have for my father now, because I put in the work with him and just decided to devote myself to loving him as an honoring of my mother. It is so profound now that I feel so complete now that would never have happened, because it would have just been me and my mother. And so certain things you can't plan, and you have to just be open to. But one thing I will say that I think will really help people in terms of surrendering, because people want to be, how do I surrender? And I just think it's really important. This piece is important. There is a difference between acceptance and surrender. Let me back up a moment. There's a few stages, because surrender, as you said, is a process. First stage is we're living life and we're in denial. We don't even know that we're lying. We're just in denial, living what we were taught to live, living our conditioning. We're just living whatever we're living. Then we start questioning. Is this all? Is there more? Am I happy? I don't know if this relationship is right. Maybe I'm here for a bigger purpose, different reason. So we begin a process of questioning. We start questioning. But then the ego gets freaked out because, if I question too much, I might have to let go of who I thought I was, my identity. And so as a result of questioning, the next phase occurs in the process of surrender, where we start to resist. We start to resist as an ego's way of self-preservation. The ego is seeking to preserve its sense of existence and identity, which isn't really real. So we start resisting. Many of us, we stay in resistance mode our entire lives. Then we start moving into the next phase. And I think anyone listening in can begin tracking, which phase am I in? Then we can start moving into a phase of negotiation. We start to negotiate. We know we need to change. We know there's some things we need to let go of. We know there's things we need to surrender, but we're afraid to surrender for all the reasons we've expressed. Who will I be, and what will happen, and the consequences? And so we start negotiating. Maybe if I do a bit of this and I do a bit of that. Maybe if I don't do this and I don't do that. Maybe if I stay in this relationship, they still have potential. And even so, we start some of us, we negotiate for 20, 30, 40 years, and we're still not happy. There comes a moment in life where you realize no matter how much you negotiate, nothing's going to change. My husband's not going to change. I'm not going to change. My situation won't be different. So we have to move into the next phase of acceptance. Accepting what is. Many books have been written about accepting what is. You accept what is. It is what it is. And yet acceptance is not surrender, because you can be in acceptance, yet still be closed in your heart. You can be in acceptance, but still be mad, still be upset, still be, pouting, still be, for instance, if it's raining outside and you don't want it to be raining outside, you can accept that it's raining outside, take an umbrella, but still be mad and upset and moaning and groaning and complaining and grumping that it's raining outside. Surrender is the open-hearted participation with the process of life. When you're in acceptance, still possibility that you're not truly participating. But when you're in acceptance, it's the open-hearted, authentic participation in the process of what's happening, even if it's difficult, even if it's challenging. Two things necessary for this. Number one, when you understand that the universe is a belief. The universe is always working for your highest good, even if you're not able to see it right now. The universe is always in a process of evolution, and so an expansion, working for your highest good, even if in this moment you can't see it. This or something better is bringing you this or something better. And so just trusting that. But the other piece, and I think you mentioned it as well, about evolution, growth, learning, what our souls are here to learn. When we realize that what we are is souls, We are souls that incarnate into this human existence, this human experience to learn, grow, and evolve. Life is the classroom for our soul's evolution. And as a result, every single situation, experience, relationship is part of our soul's curriculum. Even if it's difficult, when we understand that we are souls, then we don't get attached or caught up to the surface level story in the same way. Even if we're going through a difficult experience, illness, relationship, breakup, situation, mental, emotional, financial, that feels like so challenging, when you really understand that everything is about your soul's evolution and you've attracted this situation into your life for your soul's evolution, then you can start surrendering to the situation and surrendering to going through the situation so that you can learn the lesson for why you've attracted this situation into your life. That's a surrender. But between acceptance and surrender, the phase that most people miss, and this might be a key in this conversation for folks listening, the phase that most people sometimes miss is grieving. Many times we don't get to true, authentic surrender because we don't allow ourselves to grieve. Why? Because we're afraid that it's not spiritual. We're afraid that we'll be overwhelmed. We're afraid that it will last forever. We're afraid that we won't come back. We're afraid that we'll be shattered. Sometimes we don't grieve as a way to not acknowledge, for instance, if I don't grieve, then I don't have to admit to myself that my mother's dead. Or if I don't grieve, then I don't have to admit to myself that the relationship is over. So it's a form of sort of denial, to not truly acknowledge something as a way to protect our hearts. The other reason I think I've seen people not truly honor grieving is a spiritual bypass reason. Because I hear people say, I want to stay in a high vibration, Kute. I want to stay in a high vibe, manifest, law of attraction. And so we suppress the grief. When you suppress the grief, all feelings remain present until fully felt. When you suppress the grief, it stays stuck in your body, in your heart, in your emotional body, in your nervous system. It blocks the flow of energy moving through. And unintentionally, what ends up happening is you will likely just bring the mountain of grief or that layer of grief with you into the new situation, and new experience. So part of you won't be available. Part of you won't be truly available to the new as a result. And in many ways, you'll attract to you situations and people that are vibrating at a heavy level of grief. And so one of the things to true surrender is to give yourself permission to feel the grief, to acknowledge the grief, not wallow in it, feel it, acknowledge it, be with it, experience it, because all feelings that are felt fully, truly fully, without judgment, dissolve. No feelings last forever. So grief happens in stages. Grief can't just be dissolved on a timeline. And so when you can feel the grief and let it move through, it will tend to dissolve over time. Even if you just take the label off of grief, don't even call it grief, and just feel the sensation and the energy of what was called grief, and just be with it fully, truly be with it fully, it will dissolve in the space of acceptance and compassion. Then you can let go of that energy and open to surrendering to the new, and then you can move into flow. So grieving can be a huge key to moving into surrender, because surrender is a death. And if you're truly surrendering, there likely will be some grief of what you're releasing, the parts of yourself, an old relationship, et cetera, that you're releasing along the way.
I think that's the part most people forget to include. They think, okay, I've let this go. I've stepped away. I've left the job. I've ended the marriage. I've done this. But you're so spot on. If you don't go through that process of, and especially with the folks that listen to our show that do feel things at such a depth, and they are very empathic and they hold that. And I think when you hold that in your physical body, it can manifest blockages. Yes. It can manifest illnesses. It can, and prevent you from truly aligning with what your soul came here to do, which is help raise the vibration.
Absolutely.
Oh, this has been such a privilege and a treat. Thank you. I know that our listeners are going to benefit so very much from everything you've shared, Kute.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's been an incredible experience. And you can find Kute at kuteblackson.com. His book, The Magic of Surrender, and please visit themagicofsurrender.com. Kute can be found on Facebook, Kute Blackson Love Now, Instagram and YouTube with Kute Blackson. And Again, thank you very much. This has been a beautiful experience, I'm sure, not only for myself, but for our listeners.
Appreciate
And
being on.
yes, and please, all of you, remember to show up, do good work, and share your light. Take care.